Now, I've got to be honest, over the years, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for me when it comes to testing out Scott trail running shoes. I was actually a big fan of their lightweight, nimble and responsive Supertrac RC2, and so much so that this shoe made it onto my top 3 trail running shoe list of 2021. And it's just dawned on me, that was 4 years ago I was running in these shoes, and boy, does time fly when you're having fun. But then we can flip it and at completely the other end of the spectrum, I had a pretty terrible experience when I laced up their Kinabalu 3s around about a year ago. That shoe didn't work for me. It was too heavy, super stiff at the midfoot. The foam in the midsole was so firm, and it was literally like running in a pair of wooden clogs. It just didn't work. And actually, that shoe made it on my most disappointing running shoes of 2024. So you can see, it really has been a roller coaster ride. So I've got all my fingers and all my toes crossed for the rather good looking new Supertrac RC3 in this lovely yellow and black colorway. Now, hopefully these will live up to the performance of the previous version, the RC2, and they won't leave me disappointed like that terrible Kinabalu 3. But I guess there's only one way to find out. So let's dive into the video. Yep, it's first impressions time here at the channel again, and we've actually got new shoes arriving daily, so we're going to be pretty busy over the next couple of weeks. But I'm Lloyd Purvis and this is Run4Adventure. Thanks for tuning in again, it's really appreciated. So like I mentioned in the intro, I was a big fan of the fit, feel and performance of Scott's Supertrac RC2, but there has been some big changes in the latest version, the RC3. So we now have a new matrix upper, we have a reworked midsole setup and a redesigned radial traction outsole. So pretty much a brand new shoe from the ground up, and I am a big fan of this shoe in this great looking black and safety yellow colorway. But let's start off by giving you a few facts and figures first. So the Supertrac RC has always been the brand's sort of fast, quick, responsive trail option for race day or for those quicker training sessions when you're out on the trails. And it always seems to be the shoe of choice of their elite athletes. So when it comes to design, this is all about performance on the trails. It retails in the UK for 165 of your finest British pounds, and we've got a 20mm stack height on the midsole at the heel and 15.5mm under the forefoot, giving the RC3 a rather unusual 4.5mm heel offset. So you don't hear that very often. And when it comes to the weight, it tips the scales at a nice lightweight 253 grams in a men's UK 9.5. Construction wise, starting at the top, and this is where we see one of the biggest updates with the RC3, and that is the addition of a very durable matrix upper. And as far as I know, this is the first time that the Scott brand have used matrix in the construction of one of their trail running shoes. And that really doesn't surprise me because it's becoming very popular these days within the trail running community, and a lot of other running brands are doing a very similar thing. Just like those same brands are choosing to clad the outsoles of their trail shoes with Vibram Mega Grip rubber. The upper is a booty design, so you don't get that sort of traditional running shoe tongue, and I would say it's more like pulling on a sock than a shoe. Scott have worked in this elasticated collar around the ankle area, so that's there to try and help keep trail debris from out of the upper. And I'm really happy to feel that we've got this zonal padding worked in down the center of that tongue area, which is great because in the past when I've run in other shoes with a similar booty style upper, I have had a few issues with the laces sort of digging into the top of my foot because it's sort of lacking padding in that tongue area, whereas this feels well padded, so we shouldn't have those lace issues on today's run. There's a nice bit of structure in the heel from a substantial cradle, and we got quite a few overlays going on around the upper. So starting at the heel, working along the midfoot, over the lace eyelets and wrapping around that toe box, just to give this lightweight upper some support and to help when it comes to durability. And then finishing up when it comes to upper construction, we have a nice toe bumper up front to offer you a little bit more on-trail protection. Moving down, and this is where we see another big update in the form of the new kinetic-like foam used in the midsole. Now, Scott claimed that this is a new blend that's going to be lighter, offer more sort of rebound or energy return, and more long-lasting durability. And I've got to say, I'm just really glad that when I push into it, it feels nice and soft and bouncy, and not like concrete like it did in the Kinabalu 3. So I think we're going to get a nice quality of ride underfoot today, and I've got a funny feeling this shoe is going to be fast and responsive. Scott have also worked in their ER2, so that is their evolved rocker technology, and this is something that they've been working on over the last 10 years when it comes to R&D to create the most efficient running platforms. And it really does look like there's quite a bit more rocker geometry going on in that midsole when I compare it to the midsole of the previous version. So going to be super interesting to test that out on today's run and to see how efficient that midsole is. And last but not least, flipping the shoes over to reveal this redesigned radial traction outsole. So you can see that the lugs have been rotated 360 degrees in this spherical sort of design. And I've always found that that's offered me good levels of traction on most underfoot conditions. And then that's been paired up with a nice chunky 5mm lug, and we've got Scott's traction rubber on the outsole. So I reckon outsole performance should be pretty good on today's run. And I think the perfect testing ground for the new Supertrac RC3 is Tahiti Woods. So I'm off to get changed. I'm going to jump in the adventure bus, and we'll see you guys out in the woods. Well, it is another beautiful day in Cornwall, and we really are having a good spell of weather in the UK at the moment. However, there is a bit of a chilly breeze blowing, but we're in the woods, so we're getting a nice bit of shelter, and I would say it's as close to perfect running conditions as you can get. And I personally think you can't run in a better place when the weather's like this. Blue sky, you've got the sun sort of breaking through the trees, and the woods, when the weather's like this, is such a magical place to run. As far as the new Scott running shoe, well, I've got to be honest, when I tried the shoe on at home to test it for sizing, I was a little bit worried because it felt super narrow. Really good on length, so I'd say it's true to size on length. This UK 9.5 is giving me good room in the toe box, but width-wise, super narrow. And you know, the RC2 was a narrow shoe, but I think they've made it even narrower with the RC3. So now I've got running, I think it has eased off a bit, and it is giving me a little bit more space. I don't feel as constricted, but don't get me wrong, this is still a very narrow running shoe. Now, I know this is a sort of lightweight, responsive race shoe, and it is a precision fit, but maybe they've gone a little bit too precision on the fit. And I'd say if you had any width to your foot shape, then you're really gonna struggle with the upper. Every other aspect is really comfortable. So the tongue with that zonal padding down the middle feels nice across the top of my foot, and I've got a good hold in the heel, and it feels comfortable around the ankle collar there. So upper is feeling comfy, but I'm not 100% convinced with the narrow fit yet. But we're 3 miles into the run. We're gonna try and get 8 miles, maybe a little bit more today because the sun's out, but let's crack on, let's get these miles done. Okay, 5 miles done, run's going well. Now we got the final test, so I'm making up the hill to this super technical ridgeline in the woods. So haven't run it for a while, but it will be a really good test for the shoe. Lots of rooted trails, a lot of it's off camber, so you really do rely on an outsole that's going to give you a lot of traction. And you want the shoe to feel light and nimble and responsive, and that's exactly how the Scottish shoe's feeling. So let's get on that ridgeline. Wish me luck. that was good fun. And the Scott Supertrac RC3 handled that technical ridgeline with ease because it's got that booty construction on the upper and it's got that precision fit. I felt super connected in the shoe, gave me great levels of sort of ground feel and connection, and actually reminded me of Salomon's S-Lab Pulsar 3. Again, another lightweight sort of performance racing trail shoe. As far as underfoot comfort goes on the run so far, it's been good. I think a lot of that comes down to the new kinetic foam, but also they've got an Ortholite Ultra insole in them, and when you push into that insole, it feels like memory foam, so you've got a nice bit of plushness close to your foot. So the run's gone well so far. We've got about a mile to go to get back to the adventure bus, so get this run finished, we'll get back to the studio and we'll wrap up with a quick conclusion. So there you go, folks. That is the perfect example of sometimes first impressions can be a bit misleading, because when I first put on the Scott RC3 at home, they did feel crazy tight and to the point where it was quite uncomfortable, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to run in the shoes. And that's coming from someone with a pretty narrow foot shape, so I haven't got a lot of width to my foot at all. But as I started running in the shoe, half a mile in, a mile in, things started to give, and by the time I finished the 8-mile run, the upper was actually fitting and feeling pretty good. Although I still think it would be nice to have a little bit more width in that toe box, especially if I was going to do some longer training runs in it, or if you're just a runner with a bit more width to their foot shape. So it went from me worrying about how the upper was going to feel to actually enjoying this nice secure feeling booty upper design, and you know, secure lockdown around my midfoot, nice hold in the heel, and it really did remind me of the upper on the La Sportiva Prodigio Pro that we tested out earlier in the year. And I reckon I could literally take the laces out of the shoes and still run in them, because it really does fit my foot shape like a glove and feel very secure. And even though the upper design is pretty stripped back, it's got just enough padding in all the right areas, so it felt comfortable, no rubbing, no hot spots, no blisters or anything like that over the 8-mile distance. I mentioned it briefly out on the run that the RC3 comes with a pair of Ortholite Ultra insoles inside. Now, I would take them out to show you, but they're stuck into the shoes, so I can't get them out. But when I push into them, it does feel like it's constructed out of this nice soft sort of memory foam material, and that really does give you a nice level of plushness close to the foot. And then you pair it up with that new kinetic light foam midsole, and I think the RC3 offers you that really nice balance of comfort, protection, connection and performance. And you know, even though it is a pretty stripped back trail running shoe, I still think it gave me a nice level of cushioning on the short sections of tarmac I had to run, and then felt super connected when I was on any more technical trails. And like I said, even though it is a pretty stripped back trail running shoe, I think I'd have no problem running these up to sort of 50k distance. Now don't get me wrong, this isn't a deeply cushioned trail running shoe, in fact far from it, so it's not going to offer you that soft bouncy ride that a Salomon Ultra Glide 3 or a Mafati Speed 4 from Hoka is going to offer you, but for a pretty stripped back, lightweight, responsive trail shoe that's been designed for those quicker training sessions or race day, underfoot comfort was pretty decent on today's run. I also think that added bonus of now having a super durable matrix upper on the RC model is a massive upgrade, and I think that can only help when it comes to longevity of the upper. Although to be fair, the RC2 was a pretty durable trail shoe anyway. And then we mustn't forget about the radial traction design outsole. Now you can see from the footage it was super dry out in the woods today, so I didn't get to test levels of traction in muddy conditions, but I felt super confident on my footing when it comes to the loose, gravelly, stony, rooted trails that I ran, and not once did I doubt the level of grip and traction. It really was excellent, and I actually think because of the lug pattern and the depth of those lugs, the RC3 would actually handle muddy conditions pretty well. So wrapping up with a quick conclusion, after my first outing in the new RC3 from Scott Running, and even though I had my doubts before about the width in that toe box, I've got to say it, I think Scott have actually done a pretty good job with the update. I think the introduction of this new booty design upper, a good move. I feel even more connected to the shoe now when I compare it to the previous version. And I think with the combination of that new midsole and the new kinetic light foam in the midsole, it's offered me a little bit more comfort and underfoot protection compared to the RC2, while still providing me with that exciting, fun, nimble and responsive feel. However, I can't emphasize this enough, you know, if you've got a bit of width to your foot shape, or you just like a lot of sort of volume and room in the toe box of your trail running shoe so you can wiggle those toes about, this really isn't the shoe for you. I mean, it is very, very narrow. And like I said, it even felt quite narrow on my foot shape, and I don't have a lot of width to my foot. On the flip side to that, if you are looking for that very connected, slimline fitting trail running shoe that's going to feel fast, responsive and connected, then I think the new Scott Supertrac RC3 is definitely worth a closer look, because I was actually really impressed with them out on today's run. So there you have it, folks, my initial thoughts after my first run in the new Scott trail running shoe. Really hope you enjoyed it, really hope you found it helpful. Don't forget, if you did, to like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as it is a real big help. Also, if you've got any questions about the Supertrac RC3, please feel free to get them in the comments below and I'll try and get back to them as soon as possible. A huge shout out to Scott for sending out a pair of shoes for the purpose of this video. Really is a big help. But until next time, guys, thanks for watching, thanks for supporting the channel, it's always appreciated. We'll be back here soon, and as always, stay safe and keep on running. It also seems to be the shoe of choice for all their elite athletes. So, I think the RC3 gives you a really good balance of comfort, protection, performance, and something else. Comfort, protection, performance, ground feel.